Atlanta is changing faster than most buyers realize. Entire neighborhoods are being connected, rebuilt, and reshaped right now. In this video, I'm breaking down 7 projects that will transform Atlanta forever. I've been in this market for over 28 years, and one of these projects is creating a window that most buyers don't see. Centennial Yards. There's a huge piece of downtown Atlanta that sat unfinished for decades. Right in the middle of downtown was an area called the Gulch. All you could see was old rail yards, parking lots, and empty spaces stretching below you. It had been there since Atlanta's railroad days, and for years, it was one of the most noticeable gaps in the city, or the place you would tailgate for Falcons games. But that area is finally being rebuilt as Centennial Yards. Developers are building platforms over the rail yards and bringing the site up to street level. When it's finished, it will create about a dozen new city blocks connected to the rest of downtown. What used to be empty space is becoming a place where people can actually spend time. And this is already happening. Hotel Phoenix opened across from Mercedes-Benz Stadium in late 2025. Then this month, Cosm Atlanta is opening its doors. It's a 70,000 square foot entertainment venue built around a massive LED dome that's already making serious buzz. The larger project is expected to continue into the end of the decade. By then, Centennial Yards is planned to include thousands of residences, over 1,000 hotel rooms, retail space, restaurants, entertainment, and a Live Nation music venue sitting right next to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And later on, I'll show you a project that could reconnect neighborhoods that have been divided for decades. If it happens, it could change how people move through Atlanta. Now, this is the kind of project that brings people to the area. Restaurants are full with customers, retail gets traffic, and many visitors come just for the events. Over time, nearby neighborhoods start benefiting from that activity. That's why places like Castleberry Hill and South Downtown are getting more attention than they were a few years ago. And if there's one project that's influenced where buyers have wanted to live over the last decade, it's hard to argue with what came next. If you're thinking about moving to in-town Atlanta and trying to figure out how these projects affect the neighborhoods you're considering, reach out. I've been selling real estate in this market for years, and I'd be happy to talk through your specific situation. My contact information is in the description below. All right, let's keep going. The Atlanta Beltline. People talk about the Atlanta Beltline all the time, and there's a reason for that. Some of the most popular neighborhoods in the city sit right along it. Old Fourth Ward, Inman Park, and Ponce Highland have been attracting buyers for years. People like being able to walk out their front door and get to restaurants, coffee shops, parks, events, and local businesses without driving everywhere. The Beltline helped create that lifestyle, and it's still growing. The Atlanta Beltline connects 45 neighborhoods with trails, parks, and future transit. The East Side Trail has been open for years and has become one of the busiest parts of the system. But the Southside area was the missing piece for a long time. Earlier this year, new Southside Trail segments opened. For the first time, Atlanta now has a continuous connection between the East Side and West Side, and the remaining sections should be open by the end of the summer. The full loop is still expected around 2030, but a major piece of it is already in place. Now, the amount of money that's followed the Beltline has been pretty remarkable. A study released this past spring found the project has attracted more than $14 billion in private investment since it began. Over $5 billion of that came in 2025 alone. And we've already seen what that kind of investment can do. Old Fourth Ward looks very different than it did a decade ago. The same goes for parts of Inman Park and the area around Ponce City Market. As trails, parks, businesses, and new housing continue showing up in the same places, more people want to live nearby. And when demand grows faster than the available housing, prices tend to move higher. But people keep paying attention to neighborhoods near the Beltline. They're looking at what those neighborhoods are today and what they're becoming over the next several years. Of course, growth isn't just about adding new trails and destinations. Sometimes it's about fixing old problems. The Stitch. Midtown, Downtown, Vine City, and English Avenue all sit pretty close to each other. The problem is that the downtown connector runs right through the middle of them. For decades, that stretch of I-75 and I-85 has acted like a wall between neighborhoods that otherwise would have been much more connected. But now, the Stitch is Atlanta's attempt to fix that. The plan is to build a platform over about 3/4 of a mile of the downtown connector and create about 17 acres of parks and public space on top of it. If it moves forward as planned, people would be able to move between downtown, Midtown, and many other surrounding neighborhoods much more easily than they can do today. Mayor Dickens even called it a once-in-a-generation project. And for a while, it looked like it had the funding to match. The project secured a major federal grant, but that funding was pulled back in 2025 after federal budget changes. Even so, work on the project has continued. But wait until you see the project that completely fell apart. The funny thing is, the new plan may end up being better than the original one. I'll show you that in a bit. Now, to help move the project forward, they created Atlanta Downtown Stitch Incorporated. They've now secured additional funding. A special services district was also approved, and the goal is to have the project shovel ready with permits in place by the middle of this year. The timeline has become a little less predictable, but phase 1 is still targeting a groundbreaking in 2027 and could be completely done around 2030 if replacement funding comes together. If everything goes as planned and the project gets built, the neighborhoods around it could look very different than they do today. So that's one to keep an eye on for sure. But sometimes the most interesting changes happen after the original plan falls apart. Microsoft's Westside land. Most people hear Microsoft and Westside Atlanta and still think about the corporate campus that was announced a few years ago, but that's no longer the plan. Back in 2021, Microsoft purchased about 90 acres at Centennial Yards in Grove Park on Atlanta's west side. The original vision was a major employment center built around a Microsoft campus. Then in 2023, those plans were put on indefinite hold. Since then, the property has taken a different direction. In late 2025, Microsoft announced it would donate about 20 acres of the site to the City of Atlanta through the Atlanta Urban Development Corporation. The transfer is expected to be completed this summer. This land sits next to the Bankhead MARTA station, and the plans call for new housing along with commercial space that serves the surrounding community. Construction is still many years away. They still need to choose a development partner. Some plans don't have approval yet, and permits still have to move forward. That means construction would likely begin around 2028. So while the tech campus isn't happening, the property is still meant to hold a major redevelopment. That's a huge thing because Grove Park and the surrounding west side have already been attracting more investment. The Westside Beltline Trail is nearby. Development activity has picked up across the area, and more buyers are taking a closer look at neighborhoods that weren't getting the same attention a few years ago. So when you're looking at Grove Park and this part of the west side, don't get stuck on the original Microsoft campus plan. Things have changed quite a bit, but this area is still moving in a positive direction. And that isn't the only piece of land in Atlanta that ended up taking a very different path. Midtown Green. For years, there was a 4-acre site in Midtown that was basically just a giant hole in the ground. Right around 14th Street between Peachtree and West Peachtree, people kept wondering what was ever going to happen there. The original plan was a massive residential tower called Opus Place, planned at more than 50 stories tall. At one point, it was being promoted as one of the tallest residential buildings in the Southeast. There were renderings, announcements, revisions, even a groundbreaking event back in 2017. But the tower never got built. The lender eventually foreclosed on the property in 2023. Now, the place is heading in a completely different direction. The Midtown Improvement District acquired the property and is turning it into Midtown Green, a permanent public park designed by the same firm that created the High Line in New York. The plans include a pavilion, an outdoor amphitheater that can hold around 800 people, restaurant and cafe space, and open areas for community events and gatherings. A temporary version of the park is set to open this summer while work continues on the full project. For Midtown, this may end up being the better outcome. Midtown already has a bunch of towers, offices, apartments, and retail packed into a small area, but it was missing this kind of large public green space. So instead of another residential tower, this neighborhood is getting something people can actually use every day. Over time, parks like this become part of why people want to live nearby. They become part of the neighborhood's identity. And before we're done, we'll get to one of the biggest building booms in the city. The impact on home values may not be what you'd expect. So Midtown Green could end up being one of the most valuable additions Midtown has seen in years. And while that project affects a few city blocks, the next one touches almost every part of Metro Atlanta, Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. People don't always think about how much of Atlanta's growth connects back to the airport. Hartsfield-Jackson has been the busiest airport in the world by passenger traffic since the late 1990s. In 2024 alone, it handled more than 108 million passengers and offered non-stop service to more than 245 destinations. It's also one of the biggest economic engines in the entire state. Delta operates the majority of its flights here. Thousands of people work at the airport itself, and businesses all over the metro area depend on it. Right now, the airport is in the middle of a major expansion and modernization plan called ATL Next. Earlier this year, the city approved additional funding to keep those improvements moving forward. One of the biggest projects is happening on Concourse D. The airport is widening the entire concourse while keeping it open and operating. They're building sections on site and installing them overnight so flights can continue running during construction. When it's finished, Concourse D will be much wider with more room for passengers and larger gate areas. There's also an expansion underway on the North Terminal, along with major updates all over the airport, including parking. Now, the way this has a real impact on the housing market is pretty straightforward. Projects this size create construction jobs, vendor contracts, logistics jobs, and support services. Communities like East Point, College Park, and South Fulton often benefit from that activity because they're so close to the airport. But the bigger impact is actually long-term. Companies that need direct access to the rest of the country and the rest of the world continue choosing Atlanta because of this airport. And those companies bring jobs. Jobs bring people, and people need places to live. That's why Atlanta has continued growing for so long and why housing demand keeps showing up across different parts of the metro area. And there's one more place where Atlanta's growth is showing up in a big way: Midtown's high-rise pipeline. Midtown is going through the biggest high-rise building boom it's seen in decades. The project getting the most attention is Alina at 1072 West Peachtree. At 60 stories, it's the tallest tower built in Atlanta in more than 30 years. The Rockefeller Group is behind it, and the building includes luxury residences, office space, retail, and one of the largest outdoor amenity decks in Midtown. It topped out in late 2025 and is set to welcome residents this summer. And that's just one piece of what's happening. A 32-story tower near Piedmont Park was delivered last year. 2 more towers on Juniper Street with nearly 500 units combined also started delivering last year. There are additional projects still in the pipeline, so when you look at everything that's already been completed and what's still on the way, Midtown is adding thousands of new residences in just a few years. That has an impact on pricing. When buyers suddenly have more options, they don't need to rush into decisions. Developers compete harder for those buyers. Sellers have to be more realistic, and price growth tends to stay steady instead of jumping. That's one reason Midtown hasn't seen the kind of price spike some people expected. Over the long run, having more people living here helps Midtown keep growing. You get more restaurants, more retail, more people using transit, and more reasons for businesses to keep investing in the area. But the growth doesn't stop at Midtown. Atlantic Station, West Midtown, and parts of Buckhead often benefit as Midtown continues to fill in. The Beltline connections, MARTA stations, Midtown Green, and the development happening around them are all long-term investments that aren't going away. Right now, buyers have more inventory, more choices, and more room to negotiate. For some, it's a chance to get into Midtown before all of this growth gets fully reflected in prices. If you're thinking about buying and want to know how any of these projects could impact your search, email me at hello@vcgrealty.com. I've been helping people buy and sell in Atlanta for years, and I'd be happy to help you understand what makes sense for your goals, your timeline, and the neighborhood you're considering. If you're trying to get a bigger picture of how Atlanta is growing, I've linked a video on the city's data center boom and the neighborhoods connected to it. That's a great one to watch next. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.